Here we go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending the Clearwater River Watershed District AIS Forum. While this is our third Aquatic Invasive Species Forum, it is our very first virtual forum. So I want to welcome both the residents who are registered that live within our watershed and also those of us who are joining us from outside of our borders. We're very happy to have a number of lakes represented in the registration. Because this is virtual, because we took a little break from having these in person, I do want to thank 3 people who were instrumental in getting this off the ground and did all the heavy lifting in terms of organizing. I want to thank Kathy Johnsrud and Phil Hadia, who are speakers, and you'll get their full bios later on. And I want to thank Christine Jensen. She is a senior planner and project manager at Resilience Resources. So Kathy, Phil, and Christine, thank you. You'll note that we have a very tight agenda. So we wanted to offer a lot of useful information in a very short period of time. So we're going to stay on schedule. To do that, we're going to hold questions until the end of the speaker setup lineup. Questions can be typed in the chat. We should have a little bit of time at the end to answer questions. In the event you don't get your question answered, we will be taking all the questions down and getting answers. So we will post, in addition to the recording of this presentation, we'll post a list to the questions and some answers to the questions that you guys post. There will be some polls that pop up on your screen from time to time. It's not spamware, it's part of a feature from Zoom. So this will allow all of us on the call to get some information about, more broadly about how people are handling aquatic invasive species. So they're anonymous, so nobody's going to know specifically who answered how. It's just for all of us to share information about how all of us are handling things. Let's see. So I do want to give some special recognition to 3 board members, 3 current board members we have in the audience. We have Bob Schiefelbeiner, board chair, longtime board chair. We have Paul DeGree, also a longtime board member from Stearns County. Bob is in Meeker County. And we also have Dale Hometh. He's a newer board member. He joins us having retired from the DNR. Fun fact about Dale, he used to be the area hydrologist for the Clearwater River Watershed District. So he has a tremendous amount of expertise and knowledge about the area. And we're really lucky to have all of the board members we do. We have Chris Euchre, who is in Wright County, and then we also have Don Cole. They're not able to attend tonight, but we really do have just a lovely board that really encourages us to do things like this. We wanted to thank the county representatives. The Clearwater River Watershed District covers parts of 3 counties, Stearns, Wright, and Meeker. Representatives from each of those counties had volunteered to be here and share their expertise and their time with us during the dinner hour to let us know how we can do better with AIS in our own lake. So thank you to all of our county representatives also. And thank you then also to Pleasant Lake resident Kevin Bergstrom, who's going to share a great story about starry stonewort, and Shemek Bayer from Carp Solutions, who is going to talk about carp management. Some of you may guess carp has a lot to do with water quality in our district. So before we get to really the good stuff, I want to give you guys a really brief kind of introduction to our watershed district. So the white here is the outline of the district. You can see the Clearwater Lake right here, kind of in the eastern portion. Everything out here from the city of Watkins flows to the east, and then eventually out to the Mississippi River in the city of Clearwater. So I'm going to talk a little bit about water quality. I want to toot the horn of a couple lakes that were taken off the impaired waters list due to efforts, a lot of efforts by the Clearwater River Watershed District. That's Lake Augusta and Union Lake have been taken off the list of impaired waters that the state of Minnesota presents. So really good news. How did that happen? Well, at the time the district was formed, Residents just like you guys who care about their lakes, who care about how fishable and how swimmable their lakes are, got together and petitioned for the formation of this district. And the watershed district, those funny squiggly lines, are based on how water flows through the landscape. Now you'll see those lake outlines that you saw in the last map. Some of them are red and some of them are blue. Well, the red ones are lakes that did not meet state water clarity standards when the district formed. So these lakes were kind of muddy, like they looked a little bit like pea soup sometimes maybe. They had a lot of algae blooms and they weren't as easy or enjoyable for fishing and for swimming. This was at the time of district formation. This is the same map, but with data from the end of our last planning cycle. So how did that happen? How did we go from this, where we have a lot of turbid algae blooms in our lakes, where it's hard, not as enjoyable to swim, to this? Well, the watershed district has special authorities and special duties under the state statutes, and we are able to and responsible for implementing projects and programs throughout the watershed district that improve clarity, reduce nutrients, and protect lake streams and wetlands. So we went from, lots of turbid lakes to now we've got 2 that we're working on. There's still a ways to go for some of our lakes, and we're still continuing to do some work. But just to show you the lakes that were taken off the impaired waters list, this is the total phosphorus, the average summer total phosphorus. This is the stuff that causes the algae blooms. This is where it was at the time the district was formed. You can see it's an order of magnitude over this red line. The red line is the state standard. We want the concentration to be below the red line. This is due to an influx. The district has been very aggressive about getting finances from state and local government to do these projects and programs, so the costs are not entirely borne by the residents. So we brought in about $7 million just for water quality projects. This was the first kind of federal set of funding that was $4 million, but that's in like 1980s dollars. And then another $3+ million here brought us the rest of the way in Lake Augusta. All of our lakes in the district look similar. They have this great trend. And this is the other one, Lake Union, that got delisted as well. So that's just a brief snapshot of what the watershed districts do. So now we're going to launch into, we're going to hear from the county folks, and we're going to hear from some local success stories, and then we're going to hear about our featured topic. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Ariana Richardson. Ariana is the AIS coordinator for Meeker County. Richardson studied as an environmental biologist at SCSU, focusing on wetland and plant sciences, and has a research background in aquatic toxicology, specifically contaminants of emerging concern. They are in their 3rd year of managing the AIS program for Meeker County. They also serve as the co-chair of the Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council. So I think you'll find this sort of common with the people working in water quality. They're not only working locally, but they're working on a state level or even sometimes on a national level. A fun fact about Ariana is that they rehabilitate tropical plants as a hobby. And they have a 60-year-old plus dwarf bird of paradise who has just started to grow again. So that was very interesting. So with that, Ariana.
Thanks for the introduction. So I apologize, I joined with my camera off and now it will not let me turn it on. So I don't know if that's something that they can control, but I'll just get us started off here. So we have 104 lakes in Meeker County, and 10 of them are infested. 4 of those have Eurasian milfoil, and oh, hey, look at that. Okay, I got a pop-up and it said, failed to start video camera, select another video camera in settings. I'm not sure why that's happening. One sec. Let's see if I can pop it open.
Don't know for sure, Ariana, but do you have control of the slides? I gave you control, so.
Oh, okay. No, I can see that now. Thanks.
Yep.
Oh, I'm a little too far. So our annual AIS grants program, our watercraft inspection program, and our decontamination program are all core components of our AIS efforts in Meeker County. We are funded solely through state AIS prevention aid, similar to most other counties in the area. We have seasonal projects and community investment projects, and those have changed throughout the years to reflect our community needs. I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment here. I facilitate our grant program and oversee our inspection program. So we contract out with Waterfront Restoration. They've been a really great partner as far as managing our staff, and most of our staff are returning seasoned inspectors year to year. So we could not do what we do without them. They're vital to our efforts. Our committee for the AIS program is a county AIS advisory committee, and they're a pretty big portion of what we do. They are made up of local stakeholders, and there's 8 members. They're appointed by our commissioners. We meet 4 to 6 times a year to share the county plans for the following year, and then discuss possible projects, and then give status updates on ongoing projects. Their feedback's been invaluable throughout the years. It's really helped us to run a program that reflects what the community does and what the priorities are. Part of that is our expansion that just occurred in the last 2 years of our inspection program. We purchased our first decontamination unit, which you can see in use on that photo on the left, in 2021. It's primarily operated at Lake Minibel, as that has the highest traffic, and the association pays for weekday coverage. In 2020, our inspection program was expanded in Meeker County from 8 to 13 launches. We partnered with the U of M on their AIS Explorer tool, so that allowed us to get a picture of what our traffic looked like at our high-risk lakes. So that was about 80% was what we aimed for, with our traffic going from infested to uninfested waters. And that's allowed us to reduce the amount of money that we're spending on inspections, but also keep the proportion of traffic that we're covering. In 2020, we also started looking at what we could do to better serve the community as far as resources. So we started a tool station project, and that was mirrored off of Polk County. We're continuing that this year. We thought they would cost around $500. They've come in around $200. Our goal is to install 4 additional stations this summer. And that's really just to help folks with the clean, drain, dry efforts and make things more accessible. Our seasonal monitoring, that has been a collaborative effort throughout the years with DNR and our local associations. The county does do regular launch checks and some monitoring on our waters of concern. We also do veliger tows on our lakes that are high risk for zebra mussels. Let me go here to the next slide. So part of our management effort has been our herbicide stewardship project. So this initiative was aimed at sites in the county that have had long-term management but have shown really poor control for Eurasian milfoil. And the goal here was to offer local examples so that folks could see the benefits of using a 2,4-D alternative or herbicides that offer long-term control guarantees without putting the financial burden on those who would be paying for the treatments otherwise. That's proven to be fairly effective. On average, we award about 100,000 grants, and our treatment grants make up the majority of that. Of our grantees, we went from having 1 or 2 folks use the Procellacor alternative, and that's an herbicide that offers a 3-year guarantee with the manufacturer. We've seen that to be very effective, and now this year we have about 6 or 7 grantees who have made the move. We also offer inspection grants to provide additional hours and smaller grants for training, but sorry, I think I'm running short on time here. So just to wrap that up, we do have a few things that have changed throughout the year just based on feedback from everyone. I put up some of our goals for this next year, but if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to send me an email. We also have more detail on all of this in our county management plan, which is on our website. Thanks.
Ariana, thank you so much. Next, we have Cole Lowen from the Environmental Services Department in Stearns County. Cole has a long history with local water and natural resource protection in the Tri-County area. He actually started at the Clearwater River Watershed District, first as an accountant, and as he puts it, an all-around gopher. And then he transitioned into the administrative position. Cole actually hosted the first 2 of these forums for the Watershed District in his time as the administrator. He now serves environmental services, where he helps coordinate the AIS initiatives for the county. He works on regional watershed-based planning efforts and local administration of the Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act. A fun fact about Cole is that when he's not pondering water resource management, he enjoys making music of the percussion persuasion, discussing theology, and getting outside with his family. Cole.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Just going to check to see if this is working. Hey, it looks like it's responding. Cool. Okay. Yep. So I'm not going to take very long. I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview of how the county approaches its AIS programming. Like Meeker County, all the funds is entirely state AIS prevention aid. The program really is focused on preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species by evaluating risk and then implementing strategies to reduce that risk. And it's really focused on empowering our partners to address the AIS issues. The plan recognizes that these partners are the closest to the problems and are generally the best suited to respond. The plan itself is bucketed into 6 categories. I got the 3 principal buckets on the screen there. And you'll see the annual program budget, just to give you an idea of where the funds typically go for which strategies. The buckets would be program administration, education and awareness, inspections, population assessment and management, and then we also have response and contingency reserve. For 2022, the budget is approximately $310,000. And like I said, we really focus on empowering our partners. So 2 ways we do that is we have a standing AIS committee, and then we also provide direct grants. The committee itself is made up of stakeholders within the county interested in preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species, and the committee advises and assists the county on all aspects of the program's implementation. And it's open to both Lake Association representatives and citizens at large. So if you are a Lake Association that's within Stearns County and are interested in serving on that committee, please let me know. We would love to have you join us in that. The county has also established a request for proposal process to annually give out grants to our partners working on AIS issues. The partners that are eligible under that program include other local government units, such as watershed districts, townships, cities, and we also include lake associations who are the principal partners we fund. The process is designed to ensure the funding is going to the partners' needs, but while also ensuring the funding is utilized within the confines of the county's AIS plan. We typically announce the RFPs at the end of September, and they are due at the end of October, so roughly a month to respond. And then we make awards typically the following January. And if we have your lake association's contact information at the county already, you will annually receive the request for proposal notice. We also post it on the county website. And in 2022, for this coming year, we awarded grants to our partners totaling about $245,000. That's roughly 80% of our 2022 program budget. One thing I do want to note, kind of a new initiative at Stearns County, is what we're calling our 5-Star Initiative. This is a strategy to create positive trust-based relationships between the shoreline property owners and the lake service providers that are providing services while improving AIS prevention safeguards. Participating lake service providers commit to implement a suite of common sense AIS safeguards. The lake associations join the county program in promoting these 5-star lake service providers to the shoreline property owners through their websites, social media, newsletters, electronic, hard copy mailings, things of that nature. We hope that we can count on all the lake associations within Stearns County to join us in promoting 5-star. We're also hopeful that as this program gets up and running, that this could potentially become a statewide initiative. Stearns County is certainly not the only county that's doing a program like this. This idea actually originated way up in Itasca County. And then finally, just want to note that a lot of good information is available on our county AIS webpage, which we work hard to keep up to date. If you or association has provided environmental services with its contact information, your association will also receive emails throughout the year on the program. And you can also be added to a mailing list providing copies of our AIS committee's meeting notes. Just let me know you want to be included and I'll get you on that list. And of course, if you have any questions about the county AIS program or water quality concerns or wetland questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to help. Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you so much. Next up, we have Alicia O'Hare. She is the Water Resource Specialist for Wright County. Alicia has been with Wright SWCD since 2016. In addition to AIS program management, Alicia does the water quality monitoring and watershed planning. She got her bachelor's in watershed management from the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point and a master's in hydrogeology, which is groundwater, from Illinois State University. In her spare time, she likes to go running in the woods with her dog and bake all kinds of goodies for her husband and her her 2 children, not new children. Pardon me. Alicia.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca, and everyone from the Clearwater Watershed District. I'm just going to quickly go over what we have in our last year's programs and then what we have coming up for 2022. So you see our inspection numbers there on the left for last year. They were a little low compared to previous years. We suffered, just as everyone else did, from the staffing shortage, so that brought our numbers down a bit, but it was just kind of an off year. They happen. Our decontamination program was up though compared to 2020, but it's still short of our peak. So we're always trying to increase our decontaminations. We have a courtesy decontamination. We don't take it to the launch. We just have one spot in Annandale that we keep the decontamination unit at. We had a new program in 2021 where we offered bait composting at 12 locations in Wright County. I'll say a little bit more about it in a minute, but for now it was not smelly. And then for education, we contributed to a dock drying video that Le Sueur County produced to encourage lakeshore owners to dry their docks and boat lifts for 21 days if they were buying or selling. And our treatment program provided over $57,000 to 23 different lake associations in order to assist in treatment of AIS. There we go. This is what our inspection program looked like daily in 2021. So the blue bars are our inspections per day, and the orange line is the inspections per hour for that day. You can see Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day are through here, and a lot of the other peaks are the weekends. We do maintain weekday inspections in order to expand our base and contacts that we are working with throughout the season. This is our compost program. You can see a picture of the compost bin there on the right. And then on the left is a graph of the percentage of bait fish that we saw in those compost bins. It varied a bit by which lake it was at, and we'll evaluate them individually. But overall, we thought it did really great. We had a wonderful set of volunteers that maintained the bin for us, and we really found that with consistent maintenance, the trash buildup was not that bad. Trash was always present, not always. It was present, but it was controllable. You could usually just bring a grocery bag and fill that up with trash, and that would be enough. So we were very happy with how it was. We saw it utilized for bait quite often and continued to be used over the winter as well. So that was a great program, we thought, that worked out. For 2022, our treatment grants will be allocated next week. So if you applied for that, you'll see those letters coming through. Our bait compost program is going to be considered on a individual basis for the sites. We're considering moving 1 or 2 of them. So if you're interested in having a bait compost station at a lake near you, and you have somebody that could maintain it, let me know. And we also have some additional signs for those things. So building one from scratch only costs about $100 or so. They're not terrible. For our inspection program, we are shifting a little bit. Instead of monitoring 25 accesses, we're going to intensively monitor 15 and then very sporadically monitor all of the other ones. So a lot of concentration at the busy accesses, the risky accesses, but then sporadic inspection at many other accesses, including those that have never had inspections before. And then we're also trying to expand our hours to get some of the early morning hours and the evening hours more incorporated. And my goal this year is to get to 250 decons. So I hope that we can count on you guys to help us get that decon number up. We're at our decon station opens at just before Memorial Day, and it will extend into the end of September, and it'll be open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days a week. And so watch for that information on our website and where it's located, and give us a call if you have any questions. Thank you.
Alicia, thank you so much. I wanted to thank Ariana, Cole, and Alicia, all of our wonderful county partners, for their participation here. I want to briefly remind people, as this little pop-up box that says AIS Forum poll comes up, please fill it out. I think it will be helpful for all of us to just get a sense of who's showing up and who's interested. And right now we're going to move on to some local stories. So I have Phil Hadia, who comes to us next. Phil is a resident of Lake Marie. He serves on the local Lake Association board. Just so you guys know, for the Clearwater River Watershed District, the Lake Association boards do all the heavy lifting for the AIS programs, program management for individual lakes. They do that on a volunteer basis. It's a lot of work. They're very organized, and they do it to keep costs low for all the residents. So they're really beneficial to all of their neighbors. So if you see your Lake Association members, board chairs, and folks that are out there coordinating the treatment and getting the DNR permits, just say thank you. It's a lot of work. Phil's also a gauge reader, so we go and pound a gauge in by his deck every year. And he also serves on the district's Citizen Advisory Committee. So he'll spend time with the rest of the committee focusing on different initiatives. And he really helps us to have a conduit, or really expand the board's conduit and staff's conduit, so that we can hear what people are saying. So people that might not talk to staff or the board every day, we really want to hear and understand what the issues are and what people are facing. So with that, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. And thank you everybody else for joining in this afternoon's conversation. I know it's a busy, the spring evening, and we sure appreciate it. And we're really looking forward to Ice Out. My day is April 22nd is the day I picked for our lakes. We've seen it as late as May 1st on Lake Marie. For those of you who aren't familiar with Lake Marie and Lake Louisa, I put a picture in here of these two lakes. Lake Caroline is part of our lake association as well. I left these two lakes in the picture because we have active AIS management project in play in Louisa and Lake Marie. And Louisa is on the left here, so it's the westernmost. It kind of starts at Highway 55. And Lake Marie, the eastern part, kind of ends up at County Road 2 between South Haven and Fairhaven. And we had some very active leaders in our lake community back in the early 2010s or so. And they started this process of getting local residents involved in an AIS project. And Rebecca actually was part of that process that many years ago as well, and wrote a proposal and got a project started that is actually the fiduciary part, the money part is managed by the Watershed District, but all of the contractors and all of that type of thing is managed by local folks like myself. And we have an active board here on our lakes, and we hire aquatic biologists, we hire people to come and do AIS treatment. We actively communicate with the DNR, and it has been just a great project. And with Rebecca's help from the Watershed District to help just guide us when we get into areas where we really don't know what we're doing. And I was really excited to see Cole join us today, because Cole was one of my early mentors. When I moved out to the lake, he spent hours and hours and hours with me, probably pulling his hair out a little bit, wondering how he could possibly get this Finlander to understand this stuff. But Cole, I really appreciate your guidance. It really helped, and we're still working on it. So thank you. But the original project started as a 5-year project, and then it was kind of slated to end if nothing was done. But the Watershed District and the board in our lake association decided it was going to continue. And so right now there's about $30,000 to $35,000 that's assessed between about 225 properties for the sole purpose of treating AIS issues within Lake Louisa and Lake Marie. And that gives us a fund to be able to treat things. And I'm so thankful for those folks from 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago that started this process. They probably got a few black eyes on it because sometimes people don't want to pay extra. But last year, honestly, was the best water clarity year in our lakes in the memory of many people that live within our lake system. So it's just been a very successful project. We've aggressively treated curly leaf pondweed and have been able to even make some changing variations with intensity or the concentration of the herbicides. And we get that help from aquatic biologists and from the folks that have been doing our treatment programs or actually applying the chemicals. And this year, a couple of years ago, we, with the help of our aquatic biologists, we found some Eurasian water whalefoil again in our lakes. And so we did a very aggressive treatment of them a year ago, and then we're going to do it again this year. So our treatment program this year is to treat for Eurasian water milfoil and for curly leaf pondweed to continue that CLP program for quite some time. We are taking another position, or we're doing another active proactive thing, and we're going to have launch inspections. The Lake Association is going to be funding launch inspections at the DNR axis on the east end of our lake on Lake Marie. And that's actually in Stearns County. So Cole has been very active in helping us get that rolling to be able to find staffing and things like that. So we're all set up there. So it looks like 2022 is going to be a very good year. You see the results of this activity. This is the Lake Louisa. You can see the total phosphorus has been decreasing over time, and the clarity increasing over time. Just very exciting to see that. And Lake Marie has been the same report. When we see lines going down and lines going up in those two graphs, it's a result of a lot of people making some hard decisions at some point in time. But really, the big win in this for our lake association is to have the Watershed District as a financial authority to be able to get all of our residents on the same page and be able to cost share with a small assessment per lot to be able to have this kind of action. And it has proven to be just a great investment of our local lake community. And as a board member on our lake association, very, very supportive of this. And our membership too has been as well. And I think it's been, the results of this has really helped grow our lake association. We have over 50% participation in our lake association now from residents that are able to, and those folks are very excited about what we're doing. And it's been, the watershed district has helped out a ton. So thanks again. Thanks for having me tell our story.
Phil, thank you so much. Again, we have in the Clearwater River Watershed District, we are very lucky to have stellar lake associations. I see we have Jim Kutzner here from the Clearwater Lakes Association. And also we're just about to introduce Kathy Johnsrud, who is on Cedar Lake and has been really active in that lake association. So Kathy is a retired pharmacist and she lives with her husband Orv on Cedar Lake. She was a longtime board member on the Clearwater River Watershed District, and she served as treasurer, and that was a lot of work. So more recently, Kathy has been engaged with MNCOLA, working on a state level, advocating for issues that on behalf of lake associations, so things that people would generally find would benefit their lakes. And Kathy is working on that at a higher level now, and we're really lucky to have her. A fun fact is that Kathy is a Packer fan and that we try not to hold that against her because we like her very much in spite of that. So Kathy?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Rebecca. Yes, well, I was just delighted to help with the planning on this particular AIS forum. And we knew that there would be many different lake types represented and very many different walks of life. But there is always a shared purpose and shared values that bring us together for a forum like this. And of course, stories are really important. So Rebecca asked me to tell the story of Cedar Lake. So I have really two chapters with the district for Cedar Lake. And one of the chapters starts really at the beginning of the century in 2000. And we were noticing on Cedar Lake that the water quality was declining. So by citizen petition, we went to the Board of Managers at the Clearwater River Watershed District and asked them to take a look at a big capital project to improve the water quality on Cedar Lake. The project was approved and also includes 3 lakes to the south of Cedar in the upper watershed, Albion, Swartell, and Henshaw. The project started in 2006 with more enhancements in 2012. But all of those pieces and parts of this great big project can really be bucketed into 3 items. One are the limestone filtering ponds. The carp and rough-fish management was very important, and we'll hear more from Shemek about new strategies in that later in today's presentations. And then also ag best management practices. Now, we talk about reducing the phosphorus, and I'd like to show 2 graphs. I'm a facts and data gal. And the one in the blue on the left is the phosphorus decrease over the years on Cedar. And we are very lucky to have spectacular results from this project. And we've met the goal of the 20 micrograms per liter for phosphorus several times in the last few years. On the right is, like Phil was talking about, that we all can understand is the increase in water clarity. And there's about half a dozen Cedar folk on the call today, and yes, we still have phosphorus blooms, but the watershed district was very responsive. We're doing a 15-year review of this project, even with the great results, to see what we can do to address some of the unique climate factors that we're now dealing with. And to help you figure out, how much is this costing? A Cedar Lake resident pays $165 per year. That's assessed onto their property taxes for this. So the other project that Cedar has is very similar to what Phil just described, our AIS project. We too started about 10, 11 years ago on our Cedar AIS. And as you know, Phil mentioned, the Lake Association does the heavy lifting for this, whereas the district serves really as the fiscal entity. We use our AIS project to, again, manage the invasives, curly and Eurasian. We also use a fair amount of money right now to beef up the access monitoring. Alicia talked earlier about the Wright County access monitoring. We buy extra from them to cover the accesses, greater coverage on the cedar accesses. And one of the very exciting projects in the last 2 years that we collaborated with Wright County Parks on is to put a watercraft cleaning station. Again, you may see CD3, clean, drain, dry, up on the north end of Cedar. Like I said, I like numbers and stuff, but you can take a look at on the bottom left with the yellow is the Eurasian and our acres per year that we are treating. The big story there is that we've knocked it down enough that we don't need to trade our Eurasian anymore. We haven't treated in for 2 years now. And then our curly is at a very manageable level too. So that's my 3-minute story, you know, snuggle up around the fire on this cold and damp night. But again, gratitude and appreciation for the wonderful collaboration we have with the district and all that they've done to help us with our stewardship goals. So back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Kathy. I just want to say that all of the lake associations that we work with, Cedar Lake, Clearwater, Louisa Marie, Augusta, Pleasant, you guys make it really easy to do this work. Well, maybe not really easy, but we very much enjoy it. So I'm glad to hear stories about successes. So here we have kind of our 2 key topics, the big hairy monster that everyone's afraid of, starry stonewort. So Kevin Bergstrom, who's president of the Pleasant Lake Improvement Association, and he's been a member of this board for over 6 years. During this time, he's been responsible for the management and treatment of AIS in Pleasant. He's a longtime resident on Pleasant Lake and is committed to working with the partners to improve water quality and conservation of Pleasant Lake for all to enjoy. So Kevin, would you tell us about Pleasant Lake, please?
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay. So we'll get started here. I'll jump right in. I know we have kind of a quick time schedule tonight. I talked about that. So Pleasant Lake, for those of you who don't know that much about it, we're about 600 acres with the city of Annandale on the south shore and Wright County Park on the north shore. Maximum depth of our lake is about 75 feet. Mean is about 16 feet. So we have 2 public landings, one on the city side and one on the county side on the north side. And unfortunately, I have a long list of our current aquatic invasive species. We've got starry stonewort, Eurasian water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed, and zebra mussels. We've had a lot of success with our Eurasian water milfoil as well. We did not find any last year, but obviously we'll keep checking for that. And the bulk of my presentation today is to talk about starry stonewort. Okay, so starry stonewort was discovered on our lake on 8/8/2018. It was discovered and confirmed by the DNR. My understanding is that they received a phone call or somebody had a concern that they saw a zebra mussel on the landing. And while they were out checking that out, that's when they did do some diving or some snorkeling and did confirm that there was starry stonewort on the landing. It's a very small patch. Luckily, it's less than 1 acre. Okay, so we've got kind of 2 processes that we're using to control the starry stonewort. So we've got the management process we have for our known infestations, and then we have kind of a preventative process that we're doing throughout the rest of the lake. So basically, the management process for our known infestations is we do a rake toss monthly. So we literally have somebody come in and do rake tosses kind of beyond the area that we know where the starry stonewort is to see if it's spread any farther. We also dive every month. So we have a company come in, they dive, they look for the starry stonewort. Rake tosses can be effective, but sometimes they don't, the starry stonewort doesn't show up. That's why we do the diving in addition. And then what they do during those diving processes is if they find any starry stonewort, they manually harvest it. So they literally will pull it up or gently remove it as gently as they can and put it into a bag to kind of reduce or eliminate the spread to other areas. And then whenever we do find the starry stonewort, then we treat with a copper sulfate. The one we've been using so far is Q-Trine Plus. And we do that only when we find it. So if they go in and they look and they don't find it, we don't treat with that. The copper sulfate, they use kind of a specific process. They actually cool the herbicide before they put it into the lake, with the concept behind that being that it drops down, and we'll get to the starry stonewort that we have in those areas. Okay. Okay, then for the rest of the lake, we've implemented more of a prevention process. So we do a lake survey throughout the entire lake. We're looking for starry stonewort as well as any other invasives, but the thing that we're really looking for the most is the starry stonewort, because we're concerned if you find it too late, it can be a real challenge to try to control or try to eliminate. We also do an additional rake toss on the city landing. So what I talked about on the county landing, we do that on the city landing each year. And then we also have instituted where we do a dive on the city landing once a year. Our feeling is it's more than likely it's going to come in through a landing. So this is just our way of kind of trying to find it before it becomes a problem. If you find it early and can treat it early, you've got a real good chance of controlling it. Okay. So here's the starry stonewort, kind of the history. I don't have a graph, but I've got kind of what we've harvested over the years. So the first year, well, obviously the first year we found it was very significant. We pulled up about 96 pounds worth of starry stonewort. That's slightly overstated because we didn't go through and sort out the kind of the natural weeds, and then also the starry stonewort. So, but to make sure that they got it all, they had to dive and manually harvest 96 pounds. Then the next year in 2019, we did 11 pounds, 2020, 0.4 pounds. And then this last summer, I think on 2 occasions, they actually found 28 grams. So the good news, that's the good news so far, is that we've been able to, so far, we've been able to keep it in one area. It hasn't spread to any other part of the lake that we know of. And obviously the quantity that we're pulling each year and harvesting and treating for has gone down each year. So it is a success story from that standpoint. I've been dealing with invasives for a while, and I always have a little bit of a caveat. It's been a very good success so far, but it seems like once you have an issue with an aquatic invasive, you have to keep after it. The other thing that I'll point out is with this extensive work that we're doing, in other words, going into the landing 4 or 5 times a summer, looking for it and manually harvesting it, even with doing that for all these years, we're still finding it. So again, like I talked about before, it's something that once you have it, you have to make sure that you're continuing to address it and continuing to look at it. The other thing that's really pretty significantly different, at least for us, is all of our other aquatic invasives we'll treat maybe once or twice a year. So for example, our curly leaf pondweed that we treat that once a year. So with starry stonewort, because it can be can have such a negative effect on a lake, like I said, we do it monthly instead of once a year. So it's obviously costs us more as a result, but we think it's worth the money to prevent the spread and the potential damage that it could do to the lake. Okay, so some requests was made for financial estimates. So for this year, for our 1 acre that's on the county landing, we anticipate spending probably $12,000 to $15,000, somewhere in that range. Excuse me. Now that we are finding a little less than we have in the past, sometimes instead of going every month, we might go every 6 weeks. So basically, we take a look at the results of each one of our audits of our rake tosses and our actual harvesting, and then we decide how quickly we're going to do the next one. So again, it depends upon how much you find and how much is there. But over time, I think we might be able to reduce this somewhat. But I still see us doing this multiple times this summer. It's just not worth worth it for us to go back to, once a year and hope that we get it. And then in terms of proactive surveys, so the additional diving that we're doing on the city landing, the additional lake survey that we do every year, that's right around $2,500. So a pretty substantial investment. I mean, if you take a look at 1 acre of treatments, it's costing you probably, if you total those together, I mean, you're at almost $20,000 a year. So a significant investment, but we've been very happy with the overall results, and we want to continue to drive that in the correct direction so that we don't have a long-term concern. Okay. So kind of the lessons learned, we were lucky enough for the DNR to find it when it was a very small infestation, but the lesson learned is be proactive in finding infestations. That's where we're doing the additional lake survey every year. That's where we're doing the diving and the additional rake tosses on the city landing to try to catch it early. If you do end up with this in your lake, the sooner you catch it, the better chance you have of addressing it. When found, treat aggressively. Again, I've already talked about that quite a bit, but we don't do this once a year. We do this 4 or 5 times a year. Initially, we used to start all the monthly checks in May. And over time, we've found less growth in May of the starry stonewort. So we've actually started more in June or July, but we are going later into the season. 1 year, we actually did a check in October. So we're starting later, but we're still doing monthly checks whenever it's required. And then continue the intense monitoring. I talked about that already a couple times, but continue to monitor it on a regular basis. Check your other areas of your lake so that hopefully you can find it early. Hopefully you don't find it at all. Let me rephrase that. But if you do find it early and address that as soon as you can. Okay. So I've got a couple of reports. I've got a report from the DNR and I have a report from Blue Water Science. And I'm going to make those available to everybody that's here tonight. I understand they'll be posted on the website. So it goes into much more detail about the treatments, and it has all the actual dates and all the different things. So if anybody wants more detail about what we've done so far, the Blue Water Science report that will be available on the website and the DNR report that will be available on the website will really be able to help you with that additional information. And I'm always open if somebody has questions, if we have some at the end of the presentation, or if somebody wants to get in touch with me later on, we can make that happen as well. The last thing I want to say is I just really want to thank all of our partners, both public and private. There's so many people have stepped up to help us in this, lake residents, local businesses, Wright County. I mean, there's just been so many people that have helped us have this process come through and for us to continue our success so far. So thank you to all the partners, both public and private. And, hopefully we'll continue to improve, and I'm not going to say we'll ever totally get rid of it, but we'll continue to monitor it and minimize its impact on the lake. Okay, thanks a lot.
Kevin, thank you so much for your presentation. It's nice to see success stories, especially when starry stonewort is involved. So
I agree. Thank you.
So up next, we have Shemek Bayer, and Shemek is a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. He's been at the forefront of common carp research and management since 2006. Many of the most referenced scientific publications on carp in North America have been authored by Dr. Bayer. He has a PhD in fisheries sciences and is experienced in various aspects of carp management, biology, and ecology. He's also the founder and owner of Carp Solutions, a company that specializes in developing new technologies for carp management. Shemek.
Yes, hi everybody. I hope I can share my screen. And I'll just comment on the photo that you used. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Oh.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's funny, that photo was taken on the Rice Creek probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I was on the Rice Creek in the same exact spot this morning, the same exact weather. So how often does that happen? Well, thanks a lot for the invite. I was told that you guys were interested in developing new technologies for carp management. So that's what this talk will focus on. I do have to disclose that I'm the founder of Owner Carp Solutions, and I also work at the U of M, 50% here and 50% here. And the U of M is managing my conflict of interest. And this is kind of advancing for me. Let's see if I can get this under control. And some of the foundational research for this was provided by the ENRTF and MACERC. Okay, so this is about the common carp, which is one of the most broadly distributed invasive fish globally. And it is super abundant in many regions of the world. This is the map of Minnesota on the bottom, where, just to give you an idea, about 70% of the lake in southwestern Minnesota are impacted by carp, and about a quarter of the lakes in central Minnesota, but no lakes up north. This is a photo from Lake Wakanda by Wilmar, where the carp were recently excluded by doing lake drawdown, where the water level in the lake is lowered and to allow for winter kill under the ice. And then they put a structure between Lake Wakanda and Little Candy Ojai Lake. And you can see the difference in water quality. So clear water with vegetation in Wakanda, where the carp were eliminated, and pea soup water in Little Candy Ojai. And this has been shown in other places as well. And this photo was taken by John Lindstrom from Ducks Unlimited. So we've known for a while that carp can have negative impacts on water quality and biodiversity, because basically the way they feed, they dig in the bottom looking for food. And by doing so, they release nutrients from the sediments, primarily phosphorus, which then increases algal growth, the green algae in the water, and increases water turbidity and eliminates aquatic vegetation. So they could be a big challenge. And the current state of carp management is such that the most common techniques are water drawdowns, which is what I just explained, basically reducing water level in the lake, to usually in combination with winter freeze-outs to eliminate the carp. Rotenone treatments. Rotenone is a non-carp specific toxin that is pumped into the lake to basically eliminate or kill all the fish and put a barrier so that the lake cannot be re-invaded. And I'm really sorry about this. I have this set on a timer. I'm not sure how to see if I can disable this. If I just pause it. So the rotenone treatment is not used very often because it's very expensive. And finally, commercial netting. This is a photo of a commercial netting that was done in Lake Jarvis a few years ago in the metro area. And so all of these methods, maybe except for rotenone, the middle one, which is very expensive and used very infrequently, the water drawdowns and commercial netting are certainly valid methods, but they have their drawbacks. Obviously, water drawdowns can only be used in lakes where you can regulate the water level. And commercial netting, maybe I'll just back up a little bit. Why do we use commercial netting? Well, because carp have this interesting behavior where they form big schools under the ice. And commercial fishermen have been exploiting that behavior for decades. Those schools can be found and surrounded with big seine nets and then removed from lakes. So this technique can be very effective. However, it cannot be easily used in lakes with, for example, obstacles on the bottom, rocks or trees, or in lakes with uneven bottom, because in those places when you're trying to pull a really big net across the lake with uneven bottom, the carp can go under the net. So a few years ago, I started looking at carp life history and different behaviors they have. And sort of Carp Solutions grew out of that. And one of our major sort of objectives is to develop new technologies by exploiting unique behaviors that the carp have. So first one is spawning migrations. I was looking at some of the information from your watershed, and I know that there's some carp barriers in between certain lakes. And there's a good reason for that, because Carp often migrate between lakes and marshes to spawn, and sometimes thousands of carp will migrate in early spring. So this behavior can be used to remove large numbers of carp. So the way we do it is we use electric fish guidance systems, and we guide the migrating fish into a trap. And then we use additional electrodes inside the trap to aggregate them using mild electric field, and then we remove them with conveyors. And I have a little video of that process. And this is sort of an example of pretty complex carp removal system during spawning migrations. You can use that on a smaller scale too, in smaller streams, where you simply put this electric barrier across the stream. This is kind of like an electric fence for cattle, same idea. And if you have a small stream, you're blocking the migration, and you can remove the fish with backpack electrofisher units, which are kind of portable electrofishers, and that process could be done in small streams. But this is an example from a bigger stream. This is Rice Creek in New Brighton. You can see the migrating carp, and they're trying to cross these two yellow lines. The floats represent the electric barrier. This is another look at the electric barrier, just to kind of give you an idea what it does. And this is a low voltage electric barrier, so very mild electric field. It's not meant to paralyze the fish, just kind of prevent them from crossing through the barrier. This is an aerial photo of our study site, but let's see if this goes. We made a little video about it. So we are at Rice Creek in New Brighton, Minnesota, and we're doing a field test of a new technology for removing invasive carp, common carp, from the stream. Okay, so like I was saying, this was an example from Rice Creek. And, you know, our big sort of goal is to develop technologies that are automated to save the cost. And here's another example. So in the summer, when the carp are feeding, the carp are very social animals, and you can train them to aggregate using food. And you can then use specialized nets to remove those carp. So we call them baited box nets, and they look like this. They are usually 30 by 60 feet in size, and they're set up in shallow water by the shore. there's metal posts that go around the net. The net right now just sits on the bottom, so you cannot see it. And there's counterweights that slide up and down in those white protective sleeves. And basically, when the fish are inside, we can remotely trigger the nets to lift the size of the net up and catch the carp that are inside. They are baited with cracked corn, and we use it because it's very attractive and it can bring in a lot of carp to the net. But more importantly, it's very species specific, so we're not attracting any native fish, just the carp. And we put it in a mesh bag, so it doesn't just sit on the bottom of the lake, and the carp can kind of pull it through the mesh when they're feeding actively. This is a video of carp feeding underwater. So this is after a couple of days of baiting. So you can see that you can attract quite a few carp to a small area, and you are only attracting carp. I mean, you're not, this is in Long Lake in New Brighton, which is actually pretty high diversity of native fish, but the only fish that are attracted are carp. And we see that in other lakes quite commonly too. This video was taken by Peter Hunt, my postdoc. And on top of that, we use microchip technology. We implant some of the carp with microchips, like the one you see in my hand. This is the same technology that people use for their cats or dogs. These are really small. We insert them in the carp using a syringe, and they don't have an internal battery, so they last forever. And what we do is when we tag usually between 100 and 200 carp in the lake, and then when we start using those baited traps, we put an antenna around the bait in each trap, and we can track remotely the activity of carp at the bait. So this is an example from Long Lake, where those blue bars indicate the number of tagged carp at the bait per hour. So you can clearly see that there's some peaks. For example, on August 24th last year, the peak was at about 11 a.m. You know, the next day, the peak was at about 5 or 6 a.m. and so on and so forth. So you can use that to figure out when is the best time to spring the net to maximize the catch, because clearly the carp are not at the bait all the time. There's peaks and there's valleys. This big break in between is after we pull the net, remove the carp, and there's usually a couple quiet days, and then you can start baiting again, and they beginning to aggregate again, a new batch of carp. This is what it looks like when we are triggering the net remotely. So we just got a signal from the antenna from a website that there is carp in the net, and one of us is in the boat with a remote controller, and we'll be triggering the net to go up. So now the weights fell down and the net came up, and now the carp start jumping in the net trying to get out. But at this point, it's too late because the sides of the net are up, and the net also has mesh bottom. So once they're caught in the net, they cannot escape. It's quite a commotion. This is several hundreds of carp in a net that's 30 feet by 60 feet. And once the carp are in the net, we aggregate them towards one end of the net using a floating boom, and then they are rolled on the boat using cranes. And some muscle power towards the end. And again, here you'll see how selective this method can be. This video is from a reservoir in Michigan with pretty good native fish diversity, but typically less than 1 in 1,000 fishes other than carp. They'll actually find one here. There's a red horse that they have released. So why we like this method is because it is selective, it is pretty easy to use. I mean, and I forgot to mention the previous slide that the way this works is we typically have multiple nets in the lake, and then we run them a few times. And typically, I would say between 30 and 50% of the population can be removed in one season. And another reason why we like this method is because you can engage citizens in this whole process. So for example, we often work with lake associations or citizen groups where we install the nets at people's docks, and then the citizens can be involved in multiple ways. The simplest one is they bait the traps and they report the activity. We can also give them the key fobs to trigger the nets when the carp are feeding. So in that case, we can text somebody and say, hey, the carp are in the net, please go on your dock and trigger the net. And finally, when the time comes to remove the fish from the net, they often help with that process too. That's kind of fun because everybody's excited, you know, putting a bunch of carp in the boat. So I wanted to keep this brief. If you would like to find out more about what we do, there's a link to our website, carpsolutionsmn.com. We have more info and more videos at the website. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Shamek, thank you so much. We are exactly on time, so we have about 20 minutes for questions. Several of the speakers have opted to share contact information. So for everybody who does share contact information, we will post that information along with answers to the questions and with the video. We have had a few questions, so I'm just going to read those out loud, and then remember you can type your questions into the chat and then we'll direct them to each of the relevant speakers. Couple of the questions were answered. Pleasant Lake, who was the vendor we're using for the Starry Stonewort mapping? Steve McComas and James Johnson. So Steve has his own company called Blue Water Science, and James Johnson is from Freshwater Scientific Services. So we can post, you know, we'll try to compile which of the service providers each of the lake associations are using and just kind of post those for you so that you can get all that information. And then who is treating on Pleasant Lake? That was PLM and Lake Restoration. And then Phil, so Shamek, we have two questions about carp. If you can stay with us for a little bit longer. Phil Hadia asks, where do all the removed carp go? And Kathy Johnsrud asks, when a carp harvest is completed, how often does it need to be repeated?
Right, so where do they go? We have a couple farms up north where they're essentially buried and turned into compost. I shouldn't say we know of a couple of farmers up north where we deliver the carp. And when a carp harvest is done, how often does it need to be repeated? That's a great question. It really depends on a lake. Some of the examples of lakes, for example, from the metro area suggest that sometimes is once every decade, maybe. For example, the Riley chain of lakes or the Phelan chain of lakes. There was an intensive removal of carp at the beginning around, I would say, 2006, 2011, and that has been sufficient, and that the population has been suppressed, and it still is suppressed. In other lakes, the removal is needed almost every year. And that really depends on the environment and how easily the carp can produce young. And that's a topic for basically another 45-minute talk. But the thing with carp is that even though they have a lot of eggs, they're not very, very effective at producing young. They need certain type of environment, ideally a shallow marsh with very, very few native fish that can eat carp eggs and larvae. So that's why they migrate from lakes to marshes to spawn, because they're looking for that habitat that is essentially free of native fish. So if you have a lake that has a lot of connections to shallow marshes that often winter kill and they don't have native stable fish community, carp exploit such places as nurseries, and they can produce a lot of young, and then the young grow up in those nurseries, they move back to the lake, and whatever you remove, the adults, the young can quickly replenish. So if you have a complex watershed, usually it's a good idea to initially look at the carp migrations, recruitment hotspots to figure out how this whole system works. And then you can think about placing barriers at strategic places, and after that, you can start removing carp to make the removal, long lasting. It really varies depending on lakes.
Thank you, Schmeck. Any other questions from people? You can type them in the chat. Okay. What benefits, one of the questions, another one for Schmeck, what benefits will you see by reducing the carp? Can I interject for just 1 second, and I want to talk about the project that Kathy Johnsrud mentioned, the Clear Lake or Cedar Lake project, removal in carp and carp migration barriers. So harvesting some opportunistic kills, as well as those migration barriers. We saw several of the upper shallow lakes and marshes flip from completely turbid shallow states. So lots of algae into clear water lakes with increased rooted aquatic vegetation. So we saw dramatic improvements in water quality in our own watershed district from that. But Schmeck, do you want to, I would like to hear a broader perspective too. We've had our own experience, but.
No, this lines up with what people see in other lakes. I would say though that the effects are the strongest in shallow lakes. So the shallower the lake, the stronger the effect. That makes sense because carp are impacting the lakes through feeding in the bottom of the lake. And in deep lakes, you have thermal stratification in the summer. So the carp are not using really the deep sort of anoxic part of the lake in the summer. So the shallower the lake, the stronger the effects of carp management. And the most often seen results are improved water clarity, reduced phosphorus concentrations, and increased diversity and density of aquatic plants. Could be native or non-native, because once you get the carp out of the lake, in general, the aquatic plants will increase. And fewer algae in the water, the pea soup kind of situation occurs less often once you get the carp out.
Okay, we had Raj Roshendorfer, who lives on Lake Augusta and is very engaged with the Lake Association there. He's would like for us to mention quickly that he has a shoreline restoration workshop that he's hosting in June. I think the Watershed District and Wright County SWCU will be helping. We'll post information about it on the website. So thank you, Roger. Alicia posted that Wright County has a photo contest, and she posted basically just go to the Wright SWCDU website. And then James had a question for everyone. Shemek, can you quickly mention the threshold carp density for plant effects that you found in your research?
Yes, another great question. We're kind of lucky because we know how many carp is too many in a lake, and we actually have rapid assessment methods for carp. So in a few days, you can have a pretty good idea how many carp you have in your lake. The threshold is 100 pounds per acre. So if you have less than that, you're fine. If you have more than that, you need to think about removal. A lot of the lakes in this area, if they're pretty heavily infested, they could be 300 to 500 pounds per acre. So 3 to 5 times too many carp. And the rapid assessment method is boat electrofishing. We go out around the lake, usually 3 independent days, and you count the number of carp you catch per hour. And based on that, you can get an index of carp density and biomass in the lake.
So Mike, thank you. Mike Elms was wondering, we've seen this in a couple of lakes in our watershed with Eurasian water milfoil, and I've definitely heard about it happening with harvesting with curly leaf, but several lakes have not needed to treat for Eurasian water milfoil in the past couple of years. So his lake was Augusta. Kathy mentioned it for Cedar. It was also an issue. We've had the same situation on Clearwater Lake. So, maybe James Johnson, can you comment on that? Or Kevin?
Sure. This is James. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, James. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so the treatments, I'm not familiar with Lake Augusta. a lot of the treatments have gotten better over time as applicators have learned more about which treatments work really well. The whole hybrid millwater milfoil research going out to U is really informative too, kind of showing us that there is some hybridization between native milfoil and Eurasian milfoil, and some of those hybrids are responding a little differently to herbicides. But what we've seen with better delineations in the last decade and better dosing and more products the applicators can use, we've seen better control, meaning that it lasts for several years. It doesn't mean that it's gone forever. We've had a couple lakes where we've really just knocked the milfoil down to almost nothing, and then we take 3 or 4 years off, and by 4 or 5 years, it's kind of starting to come back, but it's at a much more manageable kind of small scale that you can just kind of keep playing whack-a-mole and keep managing it. So that's a pretty standard pattern that we've seen in a lot of Minnesota lakes in the 7-county metro and out toward Wright as well.
Thank you. And James Johnson, for everyone's benefit, he is with Freshwater. He's the founder, owner of Freshwater Scientific Services. So he's a service provider for many of the area lakes. So Alicia noted that Alicia from Wright County, who presented earlier, noted just some interesting research from Maersk. It's a very long acronym. Christine, we'll just post a link to their website and some of that research for you. And Kathy also noted that they're using Procelcor for the last 2 years on cedar. Or does anybody else want to share in the chat what they're using for treatment, or have any more questions for any of our fantastic speakers?
This is Kevin on Pleasant Lake for EREWM. We were using Procelcor as well. We didn't have a lot, but it seemed to be very effective for us. Like I said, last year, we didn't find any. Part of that's because the water level's down as well, but it did seem to help with our smaller chunk or smaller patch of EWM.
Thank you,
James, could you talk about what we're using for treatment on Louisa and Marie?
Sure. I don't remember. I think they used Procelcor last year, but I don't remember what David Hilson from PLM used for your milfoil. It was a little bit different for Marie and Louisa because we found a very small patch of milfoil. This was something I was out doing a search that we had found a couple milfoil plants along a stretch of shoreline, and I went out and kayaked actually to get into the lilies and everything in very shallow water and found kind of the mother patch. So it was, very well established, had big root balls on the plants, meaning that they'd been there for multiple years. So we wanted to get in there and get that milfoil, but it was mixed with lilies, and the chemicals we use to kill milfoil also kills the lilies. So we had to do kind of a novel approach where we go in the fall, right after the lilies kind of start dying off. They're not as, because they're not actively growing, they're not going to take up that poison and take it down to the roots. And so we went in the fall pretty late. I think we went in like October. It seemed like we were kind of
it was
chased off by the ice. Yeah. So, I mean, it was a really late fall season. So that's kind of a novel approach because of where the milfoil is. But again, it's a really small patch. I think we used Procelcor because that's a new herbicide that was just registered like 3 years ago. And it's marketed as getting into the milfoil very rapidly. So you can treat small patches. You don't have to keep it in that area for half a day. You can keep it there for an hour or two, and that's enough to kill the plant.
Just a note as well, James, we also did our treatments late in the summer, early fall as well for EWM with Procelcor.
Right, and the reason we did it in yours too wasn't that it was mixed with lilies. It's that it's easy to find like 5 milfoil plants mixed with a bunch of other plants in that fall because all the native plants kind of drop down. And so for Pleasant Lake, that's why we were treating in the fall, is that it was just, you could find the 5 plants that you're trying to kill, because we've had really successful management on a small patch there too. So we'll see. I'm going to be back out on Maria and Louisa, so we'll see how effective that treatment last year was.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen on Louisa and Marie with the great effect of the general lake-wide AIS treatment program, we've seen people take a larger interest with the help of PLM on shoreline treatment programs as well. So the combination of those two has really, it's increased our acreage of treatment, but I think it's having a greater impact on water quality and things too. So people are taking a more active stance. They're coming at it from 2 different directions. One is lake-wide and one is a shoreline. No, it's been good.
So we had a question from Annette about zebra mussels. So I get maybe James or I could kind of take this. The individual lake associations are probably doing different things. There really isn't much of a coordinated effort for those, but James, do you want to talk about that for the lakes that you work in? What are they doing for zebra mussels?
Yeah, most of the lakes I work on are not doing any active management. We don't have a great set of tools. Early on, we really had a lot of hope that we'd be able to use some products for new areas like around a dock when we first found them. But almost all of those that I'm aware of, within a year or two, they just find zebra mussels everywhere. So we don't really have the tools. There is some really great stuff going on down at MACERC though. They're looking at lake-wide treatments to go after the veligers. So rather than all of our past things have really focused on trying to kill the adults. But if the adults only live for a few years, they don't live for 20 years. So if we can prevent the baby veligers that are kind of floating around the water, if we can target those, and they're a lot less hardy, they're a lot easier to kill actually. So they're doing some really great research down at MACERC, looking at whether that's something we can do. They're using a few Lake Minnetonka bays, I think a few other lakes as well. And hopefully in the next year or two, we'll have some guidance on how feasible that is.
So Alicia posted that link to the MACERC research for us in the chat, and we will add that to our little AIS page that we're going to have all this information. So Kathy Johnsrud noted for Cedar that they're not actively managing zebra mussels, and they're focusing on educating lake residents on stewardship practices, selling equipment only after overwintering, refrain from taking your resident boat to other lakes, things of that nature. So I guess I would like to hear, from Kevin and Phil, what are you guys doing for education and outreach for your lakeshore members? If I can ask a question.
We have our lake association, we have 4 meetings a year, May, June, July, and August. And so we have a really great turnout for that, staying on top of things. We'll have guest speakers each of the times, and we give an update of where we're at on each one of our treatment programs. So that's probably our biggest one. And then we've got a Facebook page for our lake association as well. We probably have 250 to 300 people that are members of that we can communicate with that way. And then we do mailings and that type of thing as well.
Very similar. We have a Facebook page. We have a web page where we always highlight things going on in there. We also do a newsletter twice a year, and we always talk about AIS, what's going on, what are the issues, highlighting any things that folks can do to help improve the lake. But I would say those are the main ones. And our annual meeting is usually very well attended, and we always cover it there as well. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's important to the lake, right? The less AIS, the better. And obviously, it's a significant chunk of where we spend our money is on AIS. So it's good for the lake residents to understand what we're doing with them, and then also to help, anything we can do to educate them to help reduce them.
Jim Kutzner, may I put you on the spot? Jim Kutzner from Cedar Lake, or from Clearwater Lake. May I put you on the spot, sir?
Yeah.
And ask you
Turn on my camera and mic. Hi.
Perfect. Hello. Just to introduce Jim briefly, he has been very active with the lake associations around Clearwater Lake and that chain of lakes. Also active with Kathy in Mincola. He's been through these AIS capital P projects that Phil went over with Luis and Marie. We have one of those capital P projects for many of our lakes. And Jim was our main contact for revising one of the very early aquatic invasive projects that we did. So Jim, would you kind of answer that question? Just what are you guys doing for your treatment, and then also education and outreach for your lakeshore members?
Yeah, well, the question came up on what are we doing what chemical are we using to treat EWM or CLP? I actually don't know. It's a little awkward. I leave that to other people on the board to take care of that. While people were answering the question, I was feverishly searching my files here, and I found a lot of invoices, but they don't indicate what the chemical was. So something I have have to learn. There's a question about education. That's an area where I'd like to be doing more. I'd like to I'd prefer to report that we were doing a lot, but we don't do a lot of education. Not as much as I'd like to see. We do have a fairly well-developed newsletter now, and that I would say we send that out 3 times a year, and I would say that's probably the best education, plus our annual meeting in early June. That's pretty much it right now. So.
Thank you, Jim. We have reached our the hour of the day where we all turn into pumpkins. So
Alicia answers the question. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt, but.
Okay, Clearwater curly leaf pondweed with aquathal K and Eurasia water milfoil with dicot. Yep. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. I'm just thrilled that so many people could attend. I hope this was helpful. We might send out a little survey about, how you guys would like to see this information or topics for the future. So I just want to thank our speakers, our coordinators, our county partners, and our lake association partners. You guys are awesome, really. And there's a bunch of information kind of in the chat. So we're going to end the meeting, but Christine is going to compile the quotes that we're having, and we'll have a little website or little page on our website that will kind of compile service providers and some of the answers to these questions, and a link to these videos, and a link to James Johnson and Schmeck and everybody that we've heard from today. So thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening.